Parsha Toldot, one Rashi today, a very famous Rashi, that at first glance raises some very obvious questions, and it's the resolution or the attempt to resolve this understanding in Rashi that I think will present for us a framework and a mindset in which we are able to understand a bit more deeper on what the whole concept of tefillah and what the whole concept of prayer is all about. The Parsha begins telling us about the life of Yitzchak, that Yitzchak was 40 years old when he married Rivka, and it describes the family from which Rivka comes from. Then in Pasuk Kaf Aleph 21 in source 1, Yitzchak entreated Hashem opposite his wife, and as Rashi describes, Yitzchak Avinu standing in one corner and Rivka Imenu is standing in another corner because she was barren. Hashem allowed himself to be entreated by him. The Hebrew, Vayater lo Hashem. Hashem responded to Yitzchak Avinu's tefillah, and his wife Rebecca conceived, and then she had children within her, and she said, if I have to go through this pain, lama sad nochi, and she found out that it wasn't one child with two different personalities, but rather two different children, twins, within her. On this phrase, Vayatar lo Hashem, Hashem allowed himself to be entreated by him, Rashi notes, and this is brought in English, the bottom of 2, in Hebrew, in source number 5, Rashi says the following, She'ein dome tfilat tzadik ben tzadik, l'tfilat tzadik ben rasha, lefichach lo velo la. One cannot compare the prayer of a righteous child, of a righteous parent, to the prayer of a righteous person, of a wicked parent. And therefore, of the two tefillahs, Yitzchak Avinu is standing in one corner, and Rivka Imenu is standing in the other corner. To whom does HaKadosh Baruch Hu respond to? He responds to the tefillah of Yitzchak Avinu, and not the tefillah of Rivka Imenu, because Yitzchak is a tzaddik ben tzaddik, a righteous who's the son of a righteous, or Rivka Imenu is a tzaddikus, someone who's righteous, the child of someone who's wicked. So we take a look at this Rashi, and we're bothered by a number of questions. First of all, we have an understanding among Chazal that b'makom shebalei tshuva omdim, right, afilu tzaddikim gmurim cannot stand. We know that there's a great aspect to a Baal Tshuva, to somebody who comes from a difficult background and is able to rise above their society and all the negative influences. To a certain degree, you can't compare that level to someone who hasn't been challenged, to someone who hasn't been tested. So therefore, most logically, I would have assumed of the two individuals who are davening, to whom would Hashem pay attention? My logical assumption would be to pay attention to the tefillah of Rivka Imenu, who came from a very difficult environment and was able to overcome over the tefillah of Yitzchak Avinu. And secondly, we have a very basic premise in Yiddishkeit, HaKarov Hashem l'chol karav l'chol she'ikru be'emes. Hashem listens to anyone who calls out in truth. So there's really no difference if you're a tzaddik ben tzaddik, a tzaddik ben rasha, makes no difference. Someone who calls out in truth, Hashem listens to. What was it about Yitzchak Avinu's tefillah, which was not found in Rivka Imenu's tefillah, that Hashem responded to his pleading over Rivka Imenu? That's our one question for today. In Yirtzeh Hashem, we will try to look at, there are many answers that are offered. I'd like to take a look at, I warn you, it's a long shir, it's a complicated shir, and I think it raises a lot of food for thought. And this is not absolute, it's just to be able to get our minds thinking a little bit. But I'd like to try to present today is that the answers to this question will form for us the paradigm of the person davening. What is the mindset? What is the goal of the person who is involved in tefillah? And I think we will get a deeper understanding of what tefillah is all about and what our stance in tefillah should be through this shir. We will not even begin to discuss, which is really a shir b'fnei atzmo in its own right, how can we daven and God doesn't respond to our tefillah seemingly. That's a whole different question which we're not even going to enter into today. Yirtzeh Hashem, we can pick up on another time. Answer number 1, which I think is laying the groundwork for us to build our other answers, it's found in English in the ArtScroll Store Chumash, in source 3. Although it is much more difficult and thereby meritorious for the product of an evil family to become righteous, Yitzchak Avinu's achievement was even more unique than Rivka Imenu. It would have been easy for him to become a carbon copy of his father, surely as a great role model as had ever lived. But Yitzchak Avinu did not content himself with that. He forged his own path toward the service of Hashem, and the merit of such an accomplishment is awesome. This idea that the ArtScroll Stone Chumash brings down is really based on Rav Dessler, who bases it on Rav Simcha Zissel Mikel. And Rav Dessler, Mechtam Eliyahu, source number 4, it's found in Chelik Beis on the Parshios, he points out that the greatness of Yitzchak Avinu was Lo Yistapek b'mash Shitchanech et Tel Aviv. He wasn't content. He wasn't apathetic just to be satisfied with the level that his father had trained him in, which is just really a